Welcome everybody, hello. This is our 5th open house online now. I'm Laura Carey from Artillery, one half of Artillery. Morag Maguire is amongst you somewhere this evening in the massive grid of people. Penny Rutterford has been brilliantly curating and programming all of these open houses for you, and she is our guest curator tonight. Just to let you know, if you're inspired by this, you can send us a 3 to 5 minute video of your own lockdown experience as a creative, and we'll put them all together on our YouTube channel, and then we'll be selecting elements of the different open house videos to create a film from all of the events that we've hosted so far and all your own submissions to kind of create a record of what's been happening for you. Then just to mention, our next event and final event of this series will be on the 6th of August, and I'm also really excited to introduce you to some brilliant young people that live in the borough that have established a magazine called Earth Issue, so do look out for that. We have also just done the Walthamstow Garden Party at the weekend, and if you missed that weekend, it's all still online on their website, and I'm going to share the link with you in a minute in the chat. There's lots of radio shows on there, and all the artist interviews that were done as part of our Same Sky programme are on there. So if you want to hear more from local artists, if you get a bug from this evening, there are lots more interviews on the radio show on the link I've just shared. More people in the waiting room. There we go. So yeah, and if you haven't been to our events before, we expect to kind of have an hour of the open houses, some questions and answers. So at any point, please pop your questions in the chat and we'll ask those at the end. And if you want to stay on, we have a kind of social at the end, as if we were somewhere Gnome House together. You can stick around and have a little chat unmuted with people and catch up. And yeah, so we'll get on with our evening, and I'll introduce Penny Rutterford, and she actually is with Mo Morris this evening. Thanks to a little bit of lockdown loosening, we are able for the first time to be in one of the artists' homes. I'm just going to pass you over to Penny, and Penny, you are on Mo's video. Here we go. Over to Penny, thank you.
Hi there. First of all, just to reassure you that I am social distancing with Mo, even though I'm in her house. I'm really excited to be introducing Mo and Martin. I think what makes them very similar in some ways is their generosity in terms of sharing their creativity, what they know, creating events and things for people to get involved in creative activities around the borough. I think I probably first met Mo when I did the Walthamstow Poetry Trail with Artillery as part of an E17 art trail. And the poets at Forest Poets were so welcoming and so keen to be involved in a project as part of the art trail. And then I got to know Mo as she worked at the mill and how she sets up some amazing events. And
why'd you say that? Okay.
Martin, I probably first met on the E17 art trail when I went to his studio. And I think the thing that I love about Martin is his wit. Everything's very funny. Political overtone, but he's a skilled artist and works across all sorts of mediums. I mean, his animations are fantastic. He's just a wonderful artist, and he makes great slow gin. So let's start with Mo. Mo, I'm going to sort of move the tablet between Mo and I, so bear with us. Because we have to observe social distances at this time. So I'm going to question Mo, but she will have the tablet with her.
Okay.
Hello, people, and welcome to my humble home. And thank you very much, Penny and Laura, for this rather terrifying invite to be part of this series. I'd just like to warn everyone that my hearing is always bad and I wear hearing aids, but I've got this very weird condition at the moment, which means every now and then my ears just kind of close down. So although you can hear me, I think, more or less like I normally sound, it sounds very strange in my head. And I'm hoping that I will be able to hear Penny when she asks me questions, and I won't be going, what, all the time. Anyway, first question, please.
Okay, Mo. So tell me how you first felt when lockdown was introduced, and what was the immediate effect on you and your motivation to be creative?
Well, at the beginning of lockdown, it was really lovely because it was very, very sunny, and I just kind of went and sat in the garden, and I managed to offload all the various different responsibilities and everything that I had. And I was really, really, really enjoying it. I was pottering about a little bit and doing an occasional drawing, but not really doing anything very much. But as it's gone on and on and on, I have to say that I'm finding it much more difficult now, and especially the odd days when it's been cold or wet and the thinking about winter. And I know that it's made quite a big difference to me personally, in that I used to be someone who was bombing about all over the place and getting involved in things, and now I feel that I'm shrinking a bit, and I'm very anxious and I'm not keen to go out. So I feel it's kind of diminished me in lots of ways, and it's sometimes making me very depressed, and I'm not making tons of work at all. So I'm finding that quite hard.
You're a member of Forest Poets, and I believe they've continued to meet during this period on Zoom. How have you found that?
Forest Poets they've been really, really terrific. They've been wonderful. We've got a WhatsApp group, which is actually very good, and share different ideas about poems or poets that are in the newspaper or whatever. And we've had some Zoom meetings where we've been able to read poems, and also we have regular kind of email sessions whereby you can send a poem to Paul, and about 10 people all their poems are sent, and you get feedback, and it's all anonymous. And it's been very reassuring, and it's been great, and they're a very good crowd. Very proud to be part of them.
And you've written a poem during lockdown, I believe, and I think you also had one published during this period. Do you want to tell me about these and maybe read us some poetry?
Okay, well, I'm a lady with many names, so my poetry name, it looks weird because it looks upside down to me, is Mo Galaccio. And this little book, which was a few years ago now, is published by Matty at Payakakariki Press and is still available to buy if you should want to. Yeah, I did write a poem in lockdown, which I'll read in a minute. And I entered a competition and was highly commended. And so there's a poem in this book, and there should have been a launch reading, but of course that kind of went by the board. So I'm going to read 3 poems. Don't panic, they're quite short. And just for people who don't know me as someone who writes and reads poetry, very often my poems come out in my Scottish voice, whether I mean them to or not, and that's the way they want to be written. So the 3 poems, one came from the mill, a lovely drawing that one of my kids from Kids Art did, and the second one is in this book, the little book that I showed you, this book. And the third one is the one that that I wrote during lockdown. So you're going to wander off a bit, Penny, and then I'll just start.
I want to show the picture.
Okay. 3 poems by Mo Galaccio. Dog years. My young friend Finlay has a dog. He did me a drawing. Ella, Patterdale Terrier, 74 years. She's really 77, he said, but he didn't want to rub it out and spoil the picture. And she lives 7, or maybe it's 11 years to every one of his. I put her portrait on my wall and note, we are the same age. She looks very sprightly, ears cocked, tail held high, nose up, alert, present. Time is so very fluid, Ella, don't you find? An hour can drag on a whole day, yet months and years flash past all in a blink, and memory is so fickle. Moments from years ago, fixed, every detail clear, but what I ate or read or did last week, the blur. Words slip out of reach. Names and faces come adrift. I do acknowledge folk, but who they are and how we met, a mystery. I am become so grumpy, Ella. I miss that little optimist, my younger self, filled with curiosity and wonder, sometimes fearful, often not understanding, but full of trust and an unshakable belief in justice, a clear-eyed 7-year-old. Age is just a number, Ella. I'll take a lead from you, trade in my life-lived years, banish this weary cynic, become childlike again. I'm with you, Ella. I will be present. newyear.com. Dear Madam, after our meeting, herewith my portfolio. Section 1, noses. I particularly draw your attention to retrousse 3, discreet, in keeping with your requirement not to attract attention. A popular choice, I assure you, globally. Section 2, eyes. Perhaps a slight elongation favoring neither east nor west, plus total elimination of surplus skin beneath. Section 3, mouth. I can plump up the lips, diagram 1, but I cannot fulfill your wish for a permanent smile. Sections 4, 5, and 6, the neck, the breasts, the subcutaneous fat. I have achieved extreme success, see photographs before, after, in restoring the body to a taut, toned state. But, see small print, there is a strictly limited guarantee period, 2 years max. With regards to the other matters, your husband's preferences, labial tidying is included in the full rejuvenation package. I do not advise reclaiming virginity more than once. When you wish to proceed, it is required that you initial para 1, appendix 2. Failure to do so may lead to disappointment. Dear, insert client name, I await your instructions. Sincerely. The state of things. I thought to write a boasting sonnet, but found I'd nothing much to brag about. A long-lived life and full of incident, but who will vouch that it has been well spent? In isolation, I've snailed to a crawl, no sourdough baked, no masterpiece, no novel. Bees, bumble, fumble, putting me to shame. Procrastination's now my middle name. I tried to stem the tide. I did my best to stop the war and every nuclear test. I've failed. In spite of my endeavours, I fear the Tories will be in forever. I'm planting up my garden with lavender and pinks, a diversionary tactic. This government stinks. Thank you.
Those were wonderful. Thank you, Mo. Really great. So I think what would be lovely is if we could have a tour of your
Do you want to have a little look
creative
around?
space. Have a look around. I'm
Okay.
sure everybody wants to. So I will move us around,
Okay.
and Mo will explain what we're looking at.
Okay. So as Penny takes you on a nosy around my little flat. So when I moved, it's quite a small flat, and when I moved here, I wasn't making any print work, and the mill hadn't been created. So this little one-bedroom flat seemed absolutely ideal, but gradually, over the years of learning more about printmaking with Anna and Kirsten and going to the City Lit, I acquired more and more tools, more and more stuff, and I didn't know what to do about it. I thought about getting a studio, couldn't really afford it. So I thought I'd make a section of my house that is a place where I can work. So I commissioned a table, and that's where I do most of the work. Oh yeah, Penny's onto it now. So if she zooms in, you can see. So most of the work that I make is in wood. So I do make lino prints, but I mostly make little wood engravings. So you can see the teeny weeny little blocks there and the little prints. So everything's very small. And the tools are sort of nearby. They're very sharp. You put them on a little pillow and you work round that way. I'm a very, very untidy person, but my tools and everything, I'm absolutely anal about it. Has to be really, everything has to be in the right place. It has to be ready for me to use it. So where Penny is now, there's a little cupboard. Just go back a bit, that's it. There's a little cupboard with a white enamel top. And I bought that from the chairman in Orford Road. And I thought it would be brilliant because I thought I could ink up on the top and then just wash it down. But in fact, it's not flat, so I couldn't do that. But the drawer and the little cupboards, I keep all of my inks and my wet wipes and my gloves and my rollers and all the rest of the stuff in there. And on that table, so there's the apples is a 2-color lino print, and then to the slightly over here to the right, there's some leaves, and then there's various different linos and things that sort of on the other side. So the owl, and so the pink rabbits I made for the 1st of April, and just above where there's the lovely Ella again that you've seen before. So I've also got a little cabinet which I bought in IKEA, which is like a mini plant chest, and that's where I keep all my papers. And you can see me. Oh no, she's coming down. So that all my paper and everything is in there. And in a minute you'll be able to see me over the behind my rabbit. So I'm at this long table, and this end of it here is where I put newspaper in glass, and that's where I roll up, and that's where I do a lot of my printmaking. And then down this end, that's where I keep eating poached eggs or whatever. So it means I'm using all of the space. The bedroom, which you're not allowed in because it's such a mess, has got browsers and things in it. So I'm very happy to actually be able to make a lot of work at home. But what I'm really missing is I'm not able to get into Inky Cuttlefish at the moment. And I used to take all the work that I was working on, either the sketches or the linos in whatever state they were in, and they would take them down to Anna's group on a Wednesday morning, which is the health and well-being group, and share them with people. So they'd be using the presses, and it's a terrific group in that some people have never really done anything before, and some people are very experienced. So each way you would get advice. So you could ask Anna or Martin, why is this not working? And somebody who's never really done anything before, you could look at the work they were making and think, wow, that's really terrific. It's got such a lovely kind of spontaneity about it. So being shut up like this is very difficult in that I just feel I'm not able to take my work any further. And I'm really, I mean, in the mill as well, we used to do Sunday drawing, and again, just the meditation of being with a group of other people who are all doing the same thing, and then having a break in the middle and going around and looking at other people's work and being able to admire it and then look at yours and offer suggestions and things. So that's a really big loss. I'm really, really missing that. So, and the things that Penny's showing you at the moment, so the hand with the keys, that was one of the challenges. There were various challenges that happened during lockdown. So the mill was sending out challenges. So that's a double challenge in that Jason Hawkridge, he was doing a thing about hands. So I watched his videos, and then David sent out a thing about draw your keys. So I did the two things together. The kind of apples on the side, that was a workshop I did about weeds and was drawing things in the garden. And the little leaf is one of Anna's challenges where we were doing leaf printing, and then I watercolored it in afterwards. And then there's another challenge there that Anna wanted us to do some kind of plant thing, but she wanted it to have maybe an old feeling to it. So I thought about those sort of medieval things, and that's the piece of wood that I cut to make the print from. So those are some of the things that I was doing, egged on by other people, not necessarily coming from my own instincts to do it, but challenges being thrown at me. And oh yeah, and I haven't said, I'm wearing a t-shirt. This was a challenge, was to make a stencil and put it on a t-shirt. So that's another Anna one. So that's all the challenges. Okay.
Hug.
And the hug. So the only thing that I've actually made that's really my own thing during the lockdown has been this dolly, which I call the hug. And she's very similar to the grannies that were on my sofa. I don't know if you saw them. And I was very taken a few weeks ago when the news came out that loads and loads of people who are living on their own had got ill and been told to stay in, and they didn't get very good advice. And then weeks later, they were discovered dead and decaying in their flat. And I thought, this is really horrendous. What kind of a world are we living in? And I thought lots of people are really desperate for a hug. So I made this little dolly. She's dressed in somebody's dressing gown sleeve. So she's kind of in bed. She's got her nightie on, and she's having to hug herself because there isn't anyone else to hug her. And I just wanted to give her a bit of love and say, I think it's really, really terrible that so many people died like that. So that's the only piece of work that I've actually really made in lockdown.
Well, that's quite moving, and I just love your space here at home, and I'm lucky enough to actually be able to come into it. Can you take me back to when you moved to Walthamstow and how involving yourself with the local creative community helped you settle here?
I was very nervous when I moved to Walthamstow when I was about 65, 2007, and I didn't know a soul, and I was really quite worried about it because if you don't have a child or a dog, there's no reason for anybody to want to actually talk to you. And one of the really, really great things was the first year that I was here was the art trail. And through the art trail, I went into various people's houses. So I went into Fabian's house and saw all his amazing photographs and chatted to him and got to know him, and various other people's houses, and wandered around the neighborhood and began to feel that I really belonged here and that I knew people. And then I think the next year, because I'd been doing some art classes with Anna Alcott and Kirsten Schmidt, learning about printmaking, partly because I wanted to learn and partly because I hoped I might meet some, kindred spirits and maybe make some friends. And egged on by them, I put some prints together, and I had a little exhibition in the Windmill little restaurant, which is sadly gone now. And that was great in that people wrote in my little book that they liked my work or they bought some, and it was very good to feel part of a community. And I think Walthamstow is very, very unusual in that because of artillery, I think they do amazing work, and it has brought lots of people together. And then shortly after that, you know, we started the mill, and that was another way of bringing people around.
Can you tell me a bit more about the mill? Because I think that's how lots of people will know you.
Yeah.
How you got involved.
So I was part of the library campaign, again, because I'm very keen on libraries, and B, as a way to get to know people locally. And then when we finally made some sort of a deal with the council, I was one of the original 7 trustees. I was a terrible trustee, but anyway, there we go. And while we were putting the building together, and we had all the young people knocking us about and painting it and all of that sort of thing, people were giving us chairs, and I thought they were saying, no, we don't want them. And I thought, everyone's going to suddenly come out with their granny's pictures and things. We're going to go, no, we really don't want them. That's very nice. So I said to the trustee, I'd really like to use the living room space as a place to do exhibitions for the community. And they said, oh, just kind of, you just do what you like. So that's why I started. I started to, the very first exhibition we had was children's art. They were only 7 years old. They went out with Fabian and they took photographs, and then it went from there. And we had these open call exhibitions where professional artists like Anna and Martin would put in work, but also people who'd never really done anything before. And it was all about encouraging people to be creative in whatever way they wanted. And that's one of the big things about the mill, that it's part of its charitable aim. And the knitters and the sewers and the people who do all sorts of different things there, it's all about encouraging people to be creative. And the exhibitions are for anybody and everybody. And it's not about being the best at anything, it's about having a go. And I would just like to say this, because I don't think he's watching, I did really enjoy art club that Grace and Perry was doing, because I think Alan Measles and Mrs. Perry, they were terrific, and I love that cat, Kevin. But he was saying, you don't have to be good, you just have to have a go. And I thought, that's quite right, Grayson, and we've been saying that for years, and so has the art trail. So anyway, don't anybody tell him that, because he'll be on my back.
Thank you so much. Well, I think everyone would agree that actually you are very good at the art you produce.
Pardon?
You are very good at the art, your art, and you encourage so many people to get involved and be creative, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. And also, obviously, campaigning to get the mill up and running. Yeah. Was a fantastic thing to do, and I suppose that's another link really to our second artist, and a good way to introduce Martin, because he's very much a campaigning artist too. So thank you so much, Mo. That's been really wonderful. A real privilege to see inside your home. And anybody who has any questions for Mo, please put them in the chat, and we'll pick those up at the end. And also, if you want to see anything more closely, we can pop along and have a look at some things again later. Okay, so let's meet Martin. Martin Adams. Many of you will know him, I think. If you go to Inky Cuttlefish Studios, he's often there, helping to facilitate things. And he also has a studio, Mitre Studios, and exhibits on the art trail each year. And you may have seen him in the town square dressed as a tower block. So, Martin, you've been shielding during lockdown because you've got some ongoing health issues. So you've been pretty much trapped inside your space for quite a long time. So I thought it'd be really nice to kick off with a wonderful film that you've made for us about your days in solitude. So Laura's going to show the film for us.
We No. 100 days of solitude. But for many of us, it will be a lot longer. The cloud of uncertainty has been cast over the future. The virus is not going away, and we are not coming out. We are shielding. But you've not come here to hear me drone on. You've come here to have a nosy at where I live. Denied access to my studio where all my tools and materials are. Denied access to Inky Cuttlefish Studios where my friends and fellow artists gather. I've had to retreat to my front room. This is limiting. I enjoy making things. Indeed, I think making things is one of the main attributes that distinguishes us from other species. Consciously altering our environment to suit us is what we do. Culture, after all, starts on the land, and from there it is not a fast step to the gallery wall. But land, there would be no gallery. We have to be able to survive to elevate our eyes to the decorating and explaining of our existence. I'm fortunate. I have a secure pension, somewhere to live and helpful friends. But I still find it is confining. At times I want to run into the street shouting, "Come and get me, virus," in my best James Cagney voice. Isolation stunts the mind, and ultimately it kills. I seem to have retreated into playing with cartoon films, manipulating cardboard, and what William Morris describes as taking a genuine interest in all the details of daily life. The flat, the kitchen, the garden, and my minimal interface with the outside world. Mind you, he also said the secret of true happiness lies there. Many people have issued challenges, artistic and otherwise, over the past weeks. I have only responded to one of them, Mo's picture from the mill, but that soon morphed into the start of a cartoon, along with two others that I am working on. The two films that were in production before the lockdown have had to be put on hold. They require live footage and a choir. I'm now allowed out. I might just be able to get the live footage, but a choir is not yet on the cards. I have also 4 lino cuts and 2 sculptures that are on hold. It is very frustrating not knowing if they will ever be completed. Like many people, cake and bread production have filled my kitchen, another form of making. It is a creative skill, comforting and nostalgic. I'm even making my mum's bread pudding. It allows expression for people to make and gives them back a little control over their lives. It's the same in the garden, but this also contains a degree of planning for the future, an expression of hope. A cloud of uncertainty has been cast over the future. The virus is not going away and has the extra benefit of being potentially a death sentence. Without a functioning vaccine against it, there are thousands of people who know that infection means death. We would join then the highest death toll in Europe, overseen by the most incompetent and callous government we have seen in a long while. Now there's a detail of daily life we must change. But I leave you with a rainbow of hope. If we all work together, I'm sure we'll get there in the end.
Wow. Well, we promised you poetry and politics, so there you go. That was fantastic, Martin. You've said to me in the past, Martin, that you think that ideas are social. Can you tell me a bit more about what you mean by that and how it informs your own creative practice?
As human beings, we're a social species. We can't exist on our own. People try, but for a start, you need a mother and a father. And generally, we learn from other people, and we develop that in society where we go to school, where we learn things, we get jobs, we learn from other people. All of our production is based upon an interaction with other people. Now, some people think that artists have peculiar. Oh, hello! Here comes the cat. Artists think that some artists think that they have to visualize what's going on in the world. I just think it's a particular view of the world that's influenced by their outside sphere of different people, and what they want to do is isolate themselves from the world because they don't like it or whatever. I think that what that means is that they are tolerant of the status quo. They actually think the status quo is okay and they're prepared to let it go on. That's the essence of what I think anyway.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how does it inform actually what you produce?
Well, I'm not satisfied with the status quo. I think there's a lot wrong with it. I mean, if you take the current COVID crisis, I mean, I only learned today that as someone who has an underlying health condition and is over 60, I shouldn't be wearing a cloth mask. I should be wearing a medical mask. And nobody in the government has actually said anything about that. That the cloth masks are inherently unsafe for people in my condition and lots of other people. So that's an element of the status quo that's actually quite bad. It's killing people. So that means that the art I produce will reflect that social reality, that the world we live in is unfair and it works against some people whilst it works in the benefit of other people. And although not all of my work has an explicit political content, a lot of it does, because it reflects that reality. If you look at what we consider to be the old masters, a lot of the content of their work was highly political, but it was done in a context that suited that society. So the symbolism, the understanding, political currents, we don't know about, we've forgotten about, but it is all there if you research it and look for it. That artists reflecting back on society or reflecting and dealing with the society that they live in has always been the case.
It's interesting because I see you as an artist, but you were quite clear to me that you would regard yourself as a maker rather than an artist. What do you really mean by that? And can you tell us a bit about your route into creativity and your training?
Excuse me. A bit of a chest condition. My route into art, I think, starts back in 1957 when I had a cartoon published in the Beano. That spurred me on to do other things. When I left school, there was no option of going to art college or anything like that. I had to go out and get a job. I got an apprenticeship. But all the time, I had that sort of streak of wanting to produce things, wanting to draw, wanting to make things. And the making side of it, I think, came out at the time in terms of Airfix models, making little toys, making bits and pieces from the bits of plastic and stuff that you get over from the Airfix kits. So that sort of stimulated an ability to work with my hands. And drawing, I think, went along with that. Particularly after, I mean, being published in the Beano, I mean, that's pretty good going, you know, 1957, that's wonderful. So that sort of pushed me or kept me going with art. And later on, I would produce posters, leaflets, even cartoons for publications, active in the union, pushing my abilities within the union and politically within the Socialist Workers' Party that I'm a member of. All of that was very, very important to sort of stimulating how I felt I could get involved in political activity, as well as generally producing art. That's really it. I mean, when I retired many, many years ago, I managed to retire early from BT. I took myself off to the City Lit on a one-day-a-week course on fine art and a one-day-a-week course on sculpture. And that's basically how I've got together what I do.
Wow. I think it's really great how you share your knowledge. I know you're at Inky Cuttlefish quite a lot, helping to facilitate things, which is wonderful. So would the term art activist be correct for you?
In part, yes.
And do you want to tell us a bit of some of the local campaigns that you've been involved in? Without
I think the biggest one would be for the William Morris Gallery, the spin-off of which was the campaign for the mill, fortunately. But when the gallery came under threat, I hadn't long sort of been in retirement. And so I had a lot of time to dedicate myself to things. And we saw that campaign to be not just what was happening to the William Morris Gallery, because in the culture in the borough was generally coming under threat. It ranged from things like closing the local toilets all the way through to closing the libraries and William Morris Gallery. So and things like little meeting rooms, which got turned into nurseries, prices sold off for nurseries and things like that, which meant that people had nowhere to go, nowhere to exhibit or meet and do things. So we tried to have a campaign against what the council was doing as a broad general campaign, not just about the William Morris Gallery. People around at the time might remember the big puppet of The Death of Culture, which was one of the things that I produced for that. But that was the general attitude we took.
And do you think art difference?
Well, it did make a difference. The council gave up in the end in their attempts to cut what was happening at the William Morris Gallery, which ultimately would have led to its closure. And decided that it was the focal point of the borough, and that they would invest in it and use it to stimulate and attract money to the borough, something that we'd advocated for some time. So that was quite effective. More recently, we've had the spate of tower blocks being built all over the borough. I mean, where I live, down in Blackhorse Road, we're just infested with tower blocks, and they're all built on a floodplain. So in about 2050, all the feet of the tower blocks are going to be under about 10 foot of water. So I wouldn't recommend anybody buying them. It's not a good idea. But the biggest problem with the tower blocks isn't the fact that they're providing somewhere to live, but we want people to live in nice houses, nice gardens, whatever. What we don't want people to be doing is stuffed into tower blocks that have got no facilities. I mean, if you look at the additional facilities that go with the tower blocks, things like doctors' surgeries and stuff like that, they're just not being built. So more and more people are being pumped into the borough. No one's actually thought about improving the drainage system and dealing with the sewers. So they're, half the time they back up in the summer. So we're going to see all sorts of problems occurring then. Let's say the floodplains is another problem. People should be allowed to have houses that they can actually thrive in. I know some people like living in tower blocks, but back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, tower blocks were shown to be an area of living where people become isolated, where they lose contact with their children, where recreational facilities aren't there. And at the time, back then, they said that if you built a tower block, it should be surrounded by sufficient space to enable people to have play areas, etc., which meant that they became uneconomic for developers to build. Since then, all those planning decisions have been reversed, or planning objectives have been reversed, and people are just slinging up tower blocks next to tower blocks, and they have no facilities for people, which is the big problem.
Mm. Lots to think about there. Can you give us a bit of a tour of your space? It seems like a bit of a clunky link. Your lovely space. So you're not stuck in a tower block. You are fortunate enough to have some outside space during lockdown.
Oh, absolutely.
Martin, I think you've got your finger over the camera and we can't
That's
hear.
right. I was just changing cameras. There we are. Look, there's Donald Trump and Boris Johnson for you. Right, let's have a little look at my little room. This is my little workbench and my little desk. My dad made this desk out of surplus wood that he found. This is my little desk that I work on. This is the challenge that the mill issued. They wanted you to do a portrait of this, and it's the only challenge I ever responded to. And that was a little painting drawing that I came up with. My little wall up here is my reference wall, where I stick little pictures and ideas that influence the stuff that I'm working on. In particular, this section of pictures here is my friend Julia, who features in The Red Sweater, the little cartoon film I recently released. I was working on this before the lockdown. It's just a tube train, overcrowded tube train. But I realised with my lino cuts that not just my press, but all my inks and my papers are all stuck in my studio. I can't get near them, or I couldn't. I can now, I'm allowed out for a little while. So I decided not to continue with printmaking. It's too difficult, having nothing to do it with. So I concentrated instead on doing the cartoon films. This, we've got a little globe hanging up here. That is due to feature in another artwork when I could get back into my studio. It's going to actually have the world with if the polar ice caps melted, it alters the outline of all the continents, and the new continents were due to be painted on this globe, and it was all going to be powered. There was going to be another globe as well, the two globes that were going to move round each other, all powered by a giant pendulum. But I said, I need my studio to get on with that, unfortunately. So we've got all sorts of things here. This was the last lino cut that I actually worked on before lockdown. Whoops, I'm just tripping over a sheep on the floor here. One moment, look. There's my sheep. There's my sheep.
That lino cut, Martin.
Right, let's go back to the lino cut.
Detail. Got a look.
Okay, so this is my lino cut looking at life. It started with a kiss. I never thought that it would come to this. I think many people will recognise the lyrics of the song. This is me, really. It's my sort of life story and bits and pieces of my life in the lino cut. Here I am at the end, trying to hold up sort of death, trying to stop it coming to that. And that's me over there doing the carving of the lino. It's funny, when you look in the mirrors and look at yourself, you imagine yourself to be a certain age or at a certain period of your life. And it works for everybody. They don't actually see themselves as they are now. It takes a lot of training and insight to actually get an accurate picture of yourself. But when you say, I said I was a maker, well, that's one of the things I made. I was a long-distance cyclist. Cycling was very important to me. So I made a little clock out of cycle parts. Oh, that's Douglas over there. He's just reading a book on Frank Brangwyn. Frank Brangwyn, one of the founders of the William Morris Gallery. Anything else you'd like to see?
So you've got a lot of your own work there that you're working on, but you, very much like Mo, you also have quite a few pieces by other local artists, don't you?
I do indeed. They are mainly in the hall.
Yeah, don't fall down the stairs.
I'll try not to fall down the stairs. Long time since I've done that. Well, days. Depends on how many bottles I open, I suppose. Right, so here's the hall, and lots of different people's work. There's a poster here from an exhibition by Diego Rivera, one of my favourite artists of all time, and I've got a whole load of postcards of Diego Rivera's work stuck on the wall. And there's Lenin, good old Lenin. And here we have a nice fly paper with lots of flies stuck on it. This is work from Portugal in '74 and Zimbabwe in the late 80s.
Who's that? There's one there by Anna's son, I believe.
Oh, yes, yes, here we are. This was done by Anna Alcock's son a couple of years ago. She said, I'm the only person he's ever given a print to. Thought that was funny. And here's a lovely work. This is a pencil drawing of me back in the very early 70s. Someone took a photograph of me, and I developed the photograph and had a print of it. And I was about to throw it away, and a friend of mine took it and said, "Well, if you're going to throw it away, I'll give it to the kids at my school, and they can use it as a, reference work." And someone did this amazing pencil drawing and gave it to me. I was very pleased with that. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic. I'm starting to get worried about you falling down those stairs.
No, I'm nowhere near the stairs. Ah! This painting is done by a Dutch artist. I found it in a cupboard in a flat I moved into. Apparently, it had been stolen by somebody who used to live in the flat and then left it there. So I've got a stolen work of art by the sounds of it. Don't know much more about it than that. And here's a Frank Brangwyn. Now Frank Brangwyn, it's a bit out of focus, painted a lot of murals for the House of Lords. It was a big commission that he had, and the people who ran the House of Lords eventually said, "We don't want them anymore. They're too bright and colourful. We can't have bright and colourful murals all over the House of Lords." So they rolled them up and put them in a cupboard somewhere. And eventually, Swansea Town Hall, or the local government in Swansea, said, "We're building a civic centre, can we have them? And if you want to go and see the biggest selection of Frank Brangwyn's murals in this country, just get yourself down to Swansea Town Hall. It's absolutely amazing."
That's where I got my degree.
Excellent. So you know all about them. Well, that's one of Mo's. There's one of Mo's pictures. It's very interesting thinking about the lockdown. I was talking to Mo week before last, I think it was, and we both agreed that we feel like we've aged about 10 years each since the lockdown, in the way that it actually stunts you. It's the way it limits your ability to go and do things. And I know people that have actually, the aging process has actually been worse than that. They've gone into real decline through being isolated.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share that worry. I can see lots of requests coming in to see your plants. Do you want to take us back to your desk and just give and let people have a bit more of a glimpse at your plants, because they're quite something.
Okay. I'm not sure how well lit they are, but we can do that. So, where I used to live in Upper Walthamstow Road, I had an enormous conservatory. And when I moved here, I had nothing. But I did have a south-facing set of 3 windows in my front room. So I thought I'll turn my front room into a bit of a conservatory, which is what I've done. I've erected this sort of, where are we? This contraption on the ceiling to hold them all.
Wow.
And the plants hang down from that. It takes about 3 foot of the room away, but hey, I've got lovely plants.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. Do you want to take a seat?
Where to?
Wherever you feel most comfortable.
Those are the linos that I'm not working on. But
Yes.
they are there, waiting for me to get on with it at some point. Right, I better turn.
Because that's one of my next questions, really, is what you were working on before lockdown.
Right. Well, I've shown you the globes. And the idea of that was there was going to be a globe that showed what global warming meant in terms of the loss of land, how the rising seas would take over the land. That was going to be one globe. And then the other globe was going to be studded with trees. And they were going to circle round each other, driven by a great big pendulum indicating time. So that's one thing that was more or less just in the planning stage. The other sculpture that I was working on was a little bit more advanced, and that was a barbed wire canoe. I've been collecting rusty barbed wire wherever I found it, snipping it out of people's walls and things like that I shouldn't have been doing. And the idea was that I was going to have a plinth that had a creek, and it was going to be called Climate Creek. And it was suspended above it was going to be the barbed wire canoe with a paddle stuck in the mud. I think you all know what the caption is. And so those are the two big things that I was working on. Lots of other little bits and pieces, other little projects and things that are going. Like I say, this is one that that I'm sort of working on about tube trains, and that's the plate that it's worked from. I've got another plate to make for it, and I've got to experiment with colours on it to get it right. There's also a trilogy of prints, a triptych that to do with exploitation. These are the lino cuts for it. Each of the three prints has 3 plates.
Wow. So for a lot of this work, you do need more space, don't you?
Yes, yes. I can cut some of the lino here. Well, I can cut all the lino here, but I can't really print it here.
So, I mean, you've got ongoing health issues, so you don't know really when life is going to return back to normal. What do you miss
the
most?
only way that it can return back to normal is if there is a functioning vaccine.
So what do you miss most?
People. Mo was talking about hugs. Everybody needs a hug. Well, it is actually, touch is very, very important. I'm not supposed to come closer than 2 meters from anybody. People have always shunned me by about 2 meters anyway, so that's no great change. But that closeness that you have as a social species is really, really important. And that's the one thing that I miss, I think, more than anything else. It's just it's being with people, the stimulus of actually talking to people, discussing things. It's very, very important.
Yeah, no, it's very much one of the things that Mo said, that even she works on her own projects when she's at somewhere like Inky, but just the fact that other people are around, it changes the way you work.
Yeah. You know, just the simple little questions that you ask people. What do you think of this? Or is this okay? Should I do it in a different colour? Whatever, you know, it all helps. Or when you're talking about the ideas behind the work, you know, it all helps to have people around that you can talk to.
So do you think your next projects might be something more reflective about this period when you're let free?
Only in general terms, I think, apart from the fact that I'm working on several cartoon films that deal with that, but they are current work. I've just finished one called The Red Sweater. I'm working on another one called Another Day, which is more autobiographical in that actually deals with me. That's what autobiographical means, really, isn't it? So there's 3 of them in total that deal with the lockdown. But I think my only view in more general terms about the lockdown is to do with the government, the way the government has actually mishandled the whole situation. We got one of the highest death rates in the world, and we're supposed to be, we're the 5th richest country in the world. You know, it just should not have happened like that. This government is pursuing selling off the National Health Service, something that was going to be a disaster for us in a 2nd wave or a 3rd wave of this virus. So it's that general political outlook that says, no, we've got to take on this government, we've got to do something about them. That's where I would centre some of my work.
Fair enough. Sounds like you've got a lot to plan for.
We all have.
That's been really wonderful. It's been so great to look around your space as well. So I'm just going to see whether we've had any questions. So if you bear with me. We've had lots of comments along the way. People have really enjoyed looking around space.
Well, things like get him off.
Right, gosh, there's loads of comments actually. So people really enjoyed Mo's poems, and people have
They were wonderful. Yeah.
picked up some lines that they thought were just amazing. And also some people picked up this, the point that you were making about seeing yourself and being shocked at how you are.
Yes.
I think you spoke about that one, which is...
Yeah, I don't think it's so much that. It's we have an idea of what we look like before seeing ourselves. We have an idea of what we look like. And it tends to be when we were having a really nice time in life, no matter what age that was, if we were having a really good time, the last time that happened, that's how old we see we are. So for me, the best time in my life was when I was 28. So when I look in the mirror, I always see myself as 28, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Not quite right. I mean, 28's a bit of an exaggeration, but...
One of the questions is for both of you, really. In terms of what ways have you had of trying to stay connected with people during these last few months? Because it's not been easy to stay connected. What sort of things have you done? So, Martin, do you want to kick off?
I think one of the first things I realised is that we can talk to people, but what was more important was be able to see people. So having conversations over Skype, I don't use Skype, but WhatsApp or even the Zoom things over Communicom. But I've only really just got into Zoom through this evening. But visually seeing people was one of the key ways. The other way was, yes, we're supposed to be two meters from anybody, and in the fresh air that means that the droplets are blowing away. So having a front garden cup of tea with someone, me sat by the front door, them sat on the garden wall, little things like that does keep that contact going.
Mo, I don't know if you heard that question.
I heard the question, but I didn't hear what Martin said.
Well, he's talked about having little cups of tea in front, or
more
more than cups of tea in the front garden.
Oh, the slow gin.
Are you able to tell us a bit about how you've stayed connected with people?
So do all the questions stay there? So, well, I've been doing bits of shopping for Martin, whether he likes it or not, and that means that I then go and sit at his gate and he sits at his door, and we can have a chat. So that's been very, 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 very nice thing to do. And I think there's questions going up, Penny. I don't know whether you want to look at it or not. And I've been very lucky in that friends and neighbours and relatives have come to my gate and stood at, we've had distance chats at the door, and since it's kind of relaxed a bit, I've been able to have a couple of people out in the garden. But whereas before I would be bombing about all over the place in loads of different cafes and things, either on my own or with different people, or I'm not really keen on that at the moment. I have been out a couple of times, but I feel very apprehensive about the advice that the government is giving, because I don't believe a word that they say, and I think the mixed messages are making lots of people not behave very well. Is that it?
That's helpful. I think you've also been doing some yoga and things like that.
Oh yes, I do. On a Tuesday morning, I do my old person's yoga by Zoom, which has been absolutely great, actually. And she's very good, the yoga teacher. I mean, I used to go up to Orford House and do it there. The major problem is that sometimes in the morning I cannot hear at all. So I can see what she's doing, but I can't necessarily hear the instructions. But I've really enjoyed that. And then I have, as I say, I've had contact with Forest Poets, both through Zoom meetings and things, and the WhatsApps. And the Mill's got a WhatsApp chat as well, and also has got has got, so the mill was having Zoom meetings, but now that the mill has reopened, even though it's only 3 days a week, we're possibly not going to be doing that anymore. So it's been weird, actually. My ear's been really bad. I don't do an awful lot on the telephone. I do speak to my lovely daughter, lives in Wales, and we always have a chat on a Sunday. And various people from Hackney, which is where I lived before, have walked over the marshes to see me, which I think is really, really nice. So I'm very grateful that I've got networks and friends and relatives who've all gone out of their way to make sure that I wasn't here just mouldering away on my own. And I'm able to go to the shops, whereas Martin isn't. So I have gone to Sainsbury's and things, and then sometimes called in at the local little coffee shop and just bought a coffee and brought it home. But I'm not sitting for hours in the Hirondelle and things like that, like I used to do, and kind of getting the ambience of being part of the world. And I'm not sure how long it'll be before I feel confident in doing that.
A few people on here saying that they've been shielding as well, and they really relate to what you've been saying, both of you. I've got a question here from Martin about your version of Vitruvian Man. They want to know, did you set things up to photograph yourself naked, or did somebody else photograph you?
Well, people were clamouring to photograph me with no clothes on, and I had to beat them off. No, I did it myself. I was on holiday in Spain.
Okay.
And I was thinking about it, and so I set the photograph up there.
Fair enough. Another one for you, Martin. What's your favourite creation?
What that I've made?
Yeah.
Oh, God. I think it's probably, I made a Japanese lantern for the garden out of concrete, cast in concrete, and I think it's probably that. You've not been able to see it because it's in the garden, but you know, yeah.
Okay.
I think I sent you a photograph of it, but
yes, you did.
That was many years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Not sure we've got many more questions. Has anybody else got some? Although somebody here says you were wonderful as the Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper started as an anti-war puppet. It was all dressed in black. It was, what, 10 foot tall? 10? Yeah, maybe a bit more than that. And it had two big arms on sticks. And down the back of the Grim Reaper, it had a list of places that America had actually bombed since the Second World War. And there were loads of them, hundreds of them. And when the William Morris Gallery started, the campaign started, we thought that the death of culture was an appropriate thing as well. So we actually reclothed it in William Morris fabric and put it in a big hood. So it was willow pattern wallpaper, willow pattern cloth. And that was traipsed around interfering with people, called the death of culture, as we feared was happening.
Might be happening again.
Yeah, absolutely. Haven't they done well?
Question here from Mo. Can you tell us a bit more about the woodcut process? What wood you use and how long it takes? So,
well, the wood engravings are made on very so if you do a wood cut, you can use ordinary kind of shelving wood. Any kind of wood is quite soft and you can go with the grain and things like that. But if you're doing wood engravings, you work on what's called the end grain. So if you think about a tree growing up, they cut it like that, and it's very hard, and I mostly use pear, which I buy from a specialist shop, and there's only one man in England, I think, who actually prepares it. Has to be incredibly smooth and shiny, and as I say, you need special tools, which you saw there. It doesn't take me, well, the blocks are really tiny. The most interesting thing for me is looking at the little space and kind of working out how the goose or the owl or the whatever is actually going to fit in it, and whether I have to kind of twist it one way or the other way, making it be at home in that kind of space. But the actual cutting doesn't take me that long, because you more or less skating over the top. With the liner, you're kind of gouging, with wood, you're gouging into it. With wood engraving, you're kind of skating over the top more. The bigger ones, like the ginger cat, which I think, I don't think you saw that, it was in the little thing that Penny made, and then we didn't show that. The slightly bigger ones, they take more time, and but maybe about a week or something like that. Not massive. Once I've got an idea about what I want to do, then it doesn't take me that long to actually make it.
I find them amazing. They're just so intricate. Looking at how tiny they are.
Yes, well, I really am a great fan of wood engravers, and I just like, well, there's so many varieties of things that you can do, and you can make so many different marks. It's very delicate, really, or it can be incredibly bold. I've just always really liked it, and so I aim to get better at it.
I think you do really well. One for Martin. How did you get started on your kinetic sculptures?
Well, I've always liked things that move. I used to. The thing that I really wanted to make was a mechanical rowing boat, but I've never got around to doing that. Eventually, I will. But I just always liked things that move. I think when I went to Venezuela, I saw so many kinetic sculptures in Venezuela that it actually spurred me to get on and do something. I've always liked Calder's work, but I think it was a trip to Venezuela that did that. I just like things that move. There's the shadows that they cast, the different lighting. I think it's just wonderful. So if you want to do it, go to Venezuela. Well, not at the moment. It's a bit hard there at the moment, but that is the country for kinetic artwork.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I think some of your sculptures are in other places around the UK. I think we've got something on display, a praying mantis somewhere.
There's down in Crowhurst. Val Grove has started up the Crowhurst Sculpture Park, and I think the first sculpture in there was my giant praying mantis. And subsequently, she's got lots more sculptures down there. So if you're ever down that way, do call in and have a look.
How big
It's
is the
only 30 seconds from the station at Crowhurst.
So about how big is the praying mantis?
5 foot, I think.
Yeah, 5 foot tall.
How have you found trying to sell your work for both Mo and Martin? How do you sell your work? Where do you sell your work?
Where do I sell it?
Yeah.
Well, I used to, before all of this, take part in craft fairs occasionally. The E17 designers had a really nice thing called Bookish, and I was part of that. And Kate Bod used to have a market. I haven't really gone into other places, but I've shown work, and then people have got in touch with me and said they liked Anna. Anna sells some stuff at Inky Cuttlefish, and Kirsten has quite a few of my prints, and she sells them at the E17 Art House. That's nice. Amazon sell my poetry books.
So So without those markets, it's actually quite difficult now. Without those markets, it's quite difficult for artists to find ways
that's one of the reasons that's been very, very sort of confusing over these last few weeks, in that the impetus to make, the impetus to make things is not, you don't necessarily make them because you want to sell them, but there comes a point where if you're building up, masses and masses and masses of stuff, you think, well, what am I actually going to do with this? I would be quite happy to, do a whole load of charity sales or something, and get rid of some stuff, and the proceeds go to eat or heat, or different things, because you just want to move stuff out, and no point it's sitting in a browser or sitting in a drawer or whatever. It's not really kind of
And Martin, how do you sell your work?
I don't. People have to pursue me down the street if they want to buy something from me. We're actually heading for a very interesting period for artists. We're already starting to see a bit of an economic collapse. Once Brexit has hit, that will make it even worse. And the key thing about art is, I think I said this earlier, that you actually have to be able to survive. You have to be able to live before you can raise your eyes to either making or purchasing art. Existence predetermines everything. And if we've got an economic global recession hitting us, which I think we're going to have next year, that means people won't be there, won't have the money to buy art. So it's going to be a pretty hard time for artists that are relying on selling their work. But if you do want to buy anything, just have a look at my website and get in touch.
And what's the address of your website?
It's stolen-image.com.
Okay.
I haven't updated it for about a year, but it's there.
Because you've been out and about too much. Been too busy.
It's one of the things I should have done. Being locked in, I should have actually got on with updating it and sorting it out. But on the other hand, I was thinking to myself, I'll be lucky to get through this. Why bother?
Oh, that's a bit depressing. I've got a question here from Mo. We saw how a piece of art, that lovely little drawing about Ellie, inspired a poem, The Dog. Do the subjects of your own poems ever inspire your own art?
Well, if I can find it under here. When I made my little poetry book, which is lurking about somewhere under here, so it's got my own woodcuts in it, yeah, so that's the watermelon poems. So I made there's about 8 illustrations in this little book. I must say that most of the other poems that I've written, they haven't necessarily sparked off a desire to kind of illustrate them in any way. That was a project, and working on it with Matty, we agreed it would be nice to have some work. Though we had a big argument because I put 2 names anyway. When he did the reprinting, we agreed that I would only have 1 name, so it's all under Mo Galaccio rather than Mo Morris and Mo Galaccio.
Wow. Well, I think that's the end of our questions. Thank you so much, Martin and Mo, for a beautiful evening. Getting the chance to look around your space has been a real privilege, and it's those sort of privileges that we have doing the art trail. So I am hoping that we'll be out of lockdown by next summer, and we'll get the chance to go inside some of these creative spaces again. So I'll hand you back to Laura.
Hello, thank you all so very much. For me, I sort of thought I'd round up because all of us were terribly nervous about this evening. It felt like quite a significant one. And age aside, I know that Mo and Martin have lived twice or three times the life I have at the very least, and yet they still both appear to have imposter syndrome, which is sort of a lesson to all of us that think we might not yet be an artist, perhaps, and that we should just get on with it, because it's amazing to see the wealth of things that you've created, the huge contribution that you've made to your community. And I hope Anna Alcock doesn't mind me saying that Mo had said to me, "Why are you not asking Anna Alcock to do one of these?" And she's prolific and wonderful and so talented. And I hope Anna feels this is a fitting tribute to her contribution, actually, and how everyone is so interconnected locally, and how much you've all supported each other. And as well as a tour of both your homes, you've taken us on a tour of our local creative community, and mentioned so many of them. So, oh, thank you so much. It was incredibly moving, and I would like to thank you both and Penny for curating, and welcome all of you to unmute yourselves and stay with us and chat amongst yourselves, and perhaps we shall give them a little applause. And thank you all for a wonderful evening.